Man must change, either voluntarily or through severe shock.
A fiery dragon will cross the sky 6 times before this earth shall die.
At night, they will think they have seen the sun when they see the half-pig men.
A landmass rising, giant waves were set in motion by this eruption to crash upon the shores of the Australian continent. Great tidal waves were hurling themselves upon the coastal cities, destroying all in their path.
Man
Little escaped.
in terror from the floods, and kills and rapes and lies in blood.
For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be food shortages.
Earth will be broken in many places. The upper portion
There will be such a great sudden flood that one will not have a place for land to fall
such as had not occurred since men came
This
to be
prophecy
on the earth.
will come to be.
Apocalyptic dates commonly identified by visionaries of the past include, among others, the year 666, along with the year AD 1000, both favourite dates for doomsdayers. And then there was 1066, the Battle of Hastings, 1666, when London burned, which Mother Shipton, the 15th century English prophetess, accurately predicted. The Hopi Nation of northern Arizona predicted both the First and Second World Wars. They tried to warn the American government on both occasions, but were ignored. The name Hopi means peace. The Hopi Indians are one of the oldest peoples of North America. Their prophecies speak of a blue star that will enter our solar system at the end of the century. This star is predicted to cause a great upheaval on the Earth and ultimately result in a shift in man's consciousness.
Blue star shall enter our system, altering the magnetic vibrations of Earth. Mankind will be affected in a most positive way.
But before this occurs, there are 9 prophecies, according to the Hopi, that are to be fulfilled before we experience the end of the world as we know it.
We were told of the coming of white-skinned men who took the land that was not theirs and struck their enemy with thunder. Our lands will see the coming of spinning wheels filled with voices. A strange beast like a buffalo, but with great long horns, will overrun the land. The land will be crossed by snakes of iron. The lands will be crisscrossed like a giant spider web. The lands will be crossed with rivers of stone that make pictures in the sun. You'll hear of the sea turning black and many living things dying because of it. You'll see many youth who wear their hair long like our people come and join the tribal nations to learn our ways and wisdom. This is the 9th and last sign. You'll hear of a dwelling place in the heavens above the earth that shall fall with a great crash. Very soon after this, the ceremonies of the Hopi people will cease. These are the signs that great destruction is here. The world shall rock to and fro. That time's not far off. It'll come when the Sasquatch dances in the plaza and removes his mask. He represents a blue star, far off yet invisible, which will make its appearance soon.
I became aware of the Hopi prophecy on the blue star Kachina in 1995. Since then, several people from different countries, different cultures have sent me their own culture's interpretation of the blue star. The similarities are quite remarkable. The commonality is that a star appears apparently out of nowhere. It appears in heaven as an omen to indicate that there is great change coming.
Native people worldwide are stepping forth in a very brave and wonderful way over the last few years to share with us their concerns for their white brothers and for the fate of the earth and the environment. I can only hope that we will listen with our hearts and respond in an appropriate way. One of the things that they tell us is that responsibility is just that, the ability to respond. And it's very important that we respond to the warnings and to the requests at the urgings of our native brothers and do something about it before it's too late.
Nostradamus also speaks of a second son. Born in St. Remy, France in 1503, he predicted his own death in 1566 and that his grave would be desecrated by soldiers over 200 years later. He was known as a great healer and physician for his treatment of people stricken with the plague. His fame grew rapidly when in 1555 he published his book entitled Prophecies. This book has remained in print for 400 years, and when we reveal what he has to say about the 20th century, you will understand why. This is his vision of a great star appearing at the turn of the century.
The great star will burn for 7 days, and the cloud will make the sun appear double. A great misery for mankind, and an even greater one approaches when the great cycle of the centuries is renewed.
We've seen several visions of unbelievable global upheaval supposed to occur by the turn of the century. Does this mean that in the next few years we can expect to have 2 suns in our solar system, ushered in by a comet of destruction? Different prophets from different times are saying the same thing, and that is there will be dramatic earth changes around the turn of this century.
It's going to be cataclysmic for the earth as a cleansing, but then a reemergence of a time period of at least a millennium of the kind of a planet we always wanted.
The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore. And flooding waters, rushing in, will flood the lands with such a din that mankind cowers in muddy fen and snarls about his fellow men.
The poetic prophet Mother Shipton was born in Norfolk, England in 1488. Her visions began at an early age and, like Nostradamus, she foresaw her own death. She was burned at the stake for being a witch.
The dragon's tail is but a sign for mankind's fall and man's decline. And before this prophecy is done, I shall be burned at the stake, at one. My body singed, and my soul set free. You think I utter blasphemy? You're wrong. These things have come to me. This prophecy will come to be. And only when this comes to be will mankind read this prophecy. But one man's sweets, another's bane. So I shall not have burned.
in vain.
It will not simply be earthquakes and tidal waves, it'll be war. And this is something, again, that has to happen because civilization has become so corrupt. And people are not willing to change voluntarily, and therefore the changes have to be forced upon them.
As we already know, the Hopi were correct with their predictions concerning the First and Second World Wars. They also warn us of an impending Third World War.
The spirits will warn you twice, but the third time you stand alone. We've had 2 warnings, the First and Second World Wars, but now we stand alone in the third one. There'll be no one protected, and whoever dropped that gourd of ashes upon them, it is going to drop. They said the gourd of ashes will fall from the air. It will make the people like blades of grass in a prairie fire, and things will not grow for many seasons. You know the gourd of ashes by the name atomic bomb.
Wars will start up again. The sky will burn at 45 degrees. Fire approaches the great new city. Immediately a huge scattered flame leaps up. The machine of flying fire will come to trouble the great chief. Plague, famine, death from the military hands as the century approaches its renewal.
While we understand only too well wars, floods, earthquakes and volcanoes, John the Apostle, Nostradamus and Edgar Cayce described rivers and seas turning red like blood.
2 great rocks will war for a long time. Then Arathusa, the god of war, will redden the new river. Blood will be seen to rain on the rocks.
And something like a great mountain burning with fire was hurled into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood.
Hailstones about the weight of a talent in the Bible. A talent is 70 pounds. That's a very big hailstone. This is probably a small meteorite or a comet. So in all of these phenomena, we find that iron particles from the meteors dissolve into a red pigment. For instance, Nostradamus had spoken about red water, rivers of blood. The Bible had said the same thing, and miscellaneous other traditions also speak of this phenomenon. What would primitive people think this was? They wouldn't say, oh, here we got dissolved iron particles. They'd say, oh, the river is full of blood. This is a bad omen, especially when things fell out of the sky.
A very mighty trembling in the month of May, with blood, human bodies, water, and red hail covering the earth. Hail will fall larger than an egg.
For the Earth to experience the rising and sinking of entire continents and the complete obliteration of the world as we know it, we're going to need a lot more than a few active volcanoes, earthquakes or tidal waves. A shift in the Earth's axis could trigger off the necessary energy required for such global upheaval. But how could such a shift happen? Was Nostradamus seeing a shift in our Earth's axis when he says,
"And it shall be in the month of October that a great movement of the globe will happen, and it will be such that one will think the gravity of the earth has lost its natural balance, and that it will be plunged into the abyss and perpetual blackness of space."
70s, early 80s, I saw visions of comets coming into the Earth, and I had often wondered if that was going to be the source or the trigger for cataclysm. And my information indicated that that was not the case, that these comets were more of omens, again, time cycles that we can count on to indicate that changes were going to occur. However, I did, and I have been aware of one such body that came and ricocheted off the Earth's atmosphere, which first I thought was a comet. And it did indeed cause the Earth to shudder. What I later discovered, when that vision repeated itself, it was one of Mars's satellites had been pulled from its orbit due to a polarity shift on the Sun. The Sun's magnetic field shifts its position or reverses, a polar shift from the Sun, however. That induced polar shifts in the Earth and also affected the satellite of Mars, Phobos specifically. And that then left its orbit and then came in and ricocheted off of the Earth's atmosphere and then continued out into space. And the shudder indeed caused cataclysmic conditions.
Nostradamus spoke of a comet by the name of Phobos, which when translated means fear or terror. This moon revolves centrifugally around Mars and is straining to break free from its orbit. If it did so, say due to an unusual planetary alignment, it would hurtle toward our sun.
What I believe Casey and Nostradamus were indicating was that these changes were going to occur, but more accurately so, they were going to occur because of planetary shifts and alignments. My indications are that it's a very specific change as far as the Earth goes, and it has more to do with the Sun's changing its polarity and the Earth's changing its polarity, or a pole shift.
A silver serpent comes to view, and spew out men of like unknown to mingle with the earth, now grown cold from its heat. And these men can enlighten the minds of future man, to intermingle and show them how to live and love, and thus endow the children with the second sight.
Velikovsky, the controversial writer of the 50s, he had spoken about mankind in amnesia. We've been suppressing this knowledge because it was so catastrophic, and this is a time in history when it's bursting forth because it's that time again.
Immanuel Velikovsky, in his book Worlds in Collision, said Venus was once a rogue planet that almost collided with Earth a couple of times in the past before taking up its current orbit around the Sun.
It is something that's very intriguing, the idea that periodically a large piece of rock, maybe up to 1 kilometre across, could crash into the Earth and cause dramatic changes to the climate, cause dust in the atmosphere, ice ages and what have you.
Should we accept the notion of prophecy and prediction and its so-called ability to reveal the future? If so, we would want to know if such forecasts are a threat or a warning.
I think eventually we're going to have to rewrite our history books. Certainly they are rewriting archaeology and geology right now. When Casey said there were pole shifts in the past, nobody thought that was possible. Now there's very good evidence that the poles have shifted a number of times.
Maybe the prophets are right. They don't all seem to agree exactly on the same dates, but there certainly seems to be an underlying connecting thread between prophecy and catastrophic earth changes and global warfare around the turn of the century. However, they speak of an enlightened, peaceful golden age immediately following these apocalyptic events. But first, we all have to change the way we think.
In the past, we've become separated from the natural world. We manipulate the natural world. We sit in our air-conditioned offices and nature is outside us. And clearly, I think there's a case to be made that unless we do rediscover our roots with nature, we're in for big trouble.
What the fuck?